the NFL, MLB, and NHL, their fan bases are anywhere between 42 and 47% female. So if almost half of your fan base is female, if women are statistically known to be in charge of money in their household and how things are spent, why are brands not using more women in their advertising in both on camera and voiceover?
Disinformation is spreading.
There will be a surprise outbreak. Is the issue of pandemic.
No social distancing at all.
They said that they would express their concerns about the mask supply.
Where's the mask? Where's the gloves?
A second wave is
we all need some good news.
A message for all the healthcare workers out there.
Thank you.
If you're looking for hope tonight, raise your hand. If you feel alone and don't understand, if you're fighting the fight of your life, then stand.
From Santa Rosa, California, this is 19 Stories. I'm Cheryl Halling. My guest today, Christy Harst, has been heard on the World Series, Monday Night Football, and the NBA Finals as one of the national voices of YouTubeTV. She's also the national voice of John Deere and has voiced dozens of television, streaming, and radio ads. Her career in voiceover began in college when she applied for a news internship at a local classical radio station. It was during her interview that the station manager told her she had a good voice, escorted her to the studio, recorded her reading the Star Spangled Banner, and then suggested, "You'd do well in voiceovers." 2 decades later, Christy is in fact doing well and continues to work from her home-based professional studio. She loves and excels at what she does, and it shows in her body of work. Plus, she's the only one I know that has ever voiced about the dangers of bed bug mating. We'll chat about that. Christy grew up in a rural town an hour outside of Cleveland, competed in cooking and public speaking as part of the 4-H program. After graduating college, Christy experienced several terrifying situations, including being robbed in her first postgraduate job. And 5 years ago, she suffered a mild stroke. Christy, by any measure, has been successful in the world of VO, and yet she's on a mission to change the sound of a genre of voiceover that for too long has been dominated by men, the world of sports promos. Her Building Doors campaign seeks to literally change the narrative of sports promos by demanding equal opportunities for female voice actors, not just in sports, but in male-centric brands as well. Her goal is that the door will be built and always remain open. She's even curated a personal YouTube appeal to her beloved Cleveland Browns to be their secret weapon by being their first female voice to break through the noise. I'd like to open my virtual door by welcoming Christy Harst to 19 Stories.
That was probably, that was the best introduction I have ever heard from any podcast or anything. That is, wow, you did your research, sister friend. That was very impressive. Thank you. That was so beautiful.
Well, you are so welcome. I think it sets the tone and lets people know, oh my gosh, I want to know about this really intriguing woman. And so, Christy, thank you so much for being here today. And how are you and Cleveland and your Cleveland Browns and your dog and your animals and anything else doing? How are you doing today?
We're all doing great. Thank you so much. And I'm excited for the Brown season next year. We did well this year. We're getting better and better. So I'm truly excited about the potential of the team's season next year.
And I am excited about the potential for you to be voicing for them. So we're going to get into all that goodness. But I have to ask you about your bed bug mating spot.
Mm-hmm.
Please tell me how that came about.
So I work with Roy Yokelson in our industry. He's often referred to as Uncle Roy. And he produced that demo for me. And the spot on that demo, bed bug mating, was actually an homage to my father. Growing up, I used to watch PBS Nature. I grew up in a kind of strict house. And so there weren't a lot of things that we could watch. And also back then, having multiple TVs in your house really wasn't a thing. So there was one TV and Dad usually controlled it. And we all had to agree on what we were going to watch together as a family. And so we watched PBS Nature, and my dad would do the funniest voiceover narrations to these PBS nature specials. Like if there was a mating scene and it may be uncomfortable for kids to be watching, like he would make silly voices and, make little jokes about it. And I was telling Roy all of this. And as you know, Cheryl, the best demos are those based on personal experiences because you're not just reading a script, you're, calling upon an experience in your life. And
Mhm.
that's what Roy and many other demo producers believe in doing. And so he decided to do this bed bug mating script so I could kind of channel my dad.
That is brilliant. A shout out to Uncle Roy. Hopefully you'll listen to this episode because when I heard that, I was drinking coffee and, listening to your demos and I'm like almost spit it all over the place because this is hysterical. I mean, everyone has such an aversion to bed bugs. Who would ever think of making light of it? It's a great spot because
Thank
obviously
you.
we're sitting here talking about it. And one of the reasons I invited you to chat with me is that, well, one, I wanted to get to know you outside of our social media chats, but I really want to talk about your Building Doors campaign. We're going to talk about some of the stats that have happened just in the short while since you've launched it. And I mentioned in your intro about your work with Major League Baseball and the NFL as one of the national voices of YouTube TV. However, in reading one of your answers in the really cool series 3 Questions that was created by Lawrence Payne.
Mhm, yeah, so cool.
Yeah, it's a very, very cool. And, just a shout out to Lawrence also. It's a series he's doing on LinkedIn. You said that you've been chasing a dream to voice promos for male dominated sports, and that after 3+ years of workshops, coaching, out of the box marketing, etc., you were frustrated that nothing had materialized. So I'm curious how the work you've done for YouTube TV differs from the type of work that the Building Doors campaign seeks to open the door to.
Sure. So I can't remember exactly. No, yes, I can. I got the YouTube TV job off of a pay-to-play site,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and it wasn't necessarily promo. It was just to be the new voice of YouTube TV, and it was the
Mhm.
second year that YouTube TV was out. And so YouTube TV, because it was the second year out, sponsored, was a major advertiser. I know they were like the main sponsor of the World Series that year. And then they did a ton of advertising on Monday Night Football and on the NBA Finals. So they used my stuff. So when I say that my voice has been featured, it was. I mean, I had people texting me, calling me like, I just heard your voice on the NBA Finals and I just heard your voice on Monday Night Football. And that's great, right? But it was advertisements for YouTube TV for people to go and subscribe and to watch. So it wasn't necessarily the promos that I want to do. So I want to do the in-stadium promos for the Browns. I want to do the promos for UFC or for the PGA Tour that say this Saturday at Pebble Beach, that kind of thing. I don't hear a lot of women doing that. And that's what I want to do. And that's what I've been chasing.
Thank you for clarifying that. And I had a feeling that's what it was, but the fact that you were even associated, I feel like that just brings you to the 6 degrees of separation,
Oh, yeah.
right? I
That's
mean,
a good point.
it's like you're there, you can't quite touch it yet, but you're still within that reach, right? You're
Right.
you're you're still there. So let's talk about you've talked about your motivation. What does it entail, the Open Doors campaign, and how have you attracted the contributions of these amazing women who have contributed so far? So for those who aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, maybe you can kind of paint the picture of what it entails and what these women are doing when I say they've contributed.
Sure. As you mentioned in your intro, I've spent the last 3.5, 4 years trying to break into promo, specifically male-dominated sports. And we've mentioned some of them, the NFL, the MLB, UFC, PGA, NHL. And I did a workshop in early February with a well-known, very respected promo agent in our industry. And I asked her point blank what my chances were. And I really appreciated her honesty. She was like, yeah, not so much. There's just not a lot of opportunities for women in that space. They exist, they're there, but they're not in the multitude that they are for men. And they're kind of like a unicorn, right? They just like You think you
Yeah.
see it and you don't see, oh, somebody saw it. Um,
Yeah.
I think I could probably name 4 or 5 women that I know that have done something for any one of those male-dominated genres, but there's no way I could name all the men because there's too many, right? So I got really frustrated, and I thought to myself, well, what have I been doing? Why have I been doing this the last 3, 4 years of my life? And I found myself with 2 choices. I woke up the next morning and said, well, maybe I should just forget it and just focus on my commercial work and narration and, that kind of stuff. Or maybe I should just go get a promo job. Maybe I should just make my own way.
Yes.
And then I
Yes.
started thinking, well, how can I do that? Because I've already done this out of the box marketing, right? I've already created fan videos and narrated them. I've talked to everyone I could possibly know who knows someone at the Browns, at the Guardians. I've tried all of the traditional ways, right? And I took my dog for a walk. I came back. I called a colleague of ours and I asked for their advice. And I said, I think I want to do something on a broader scale. And that's where Building Doors was born. It's very clear that women throughout history have broken glass ceilings. They have knocked down doors. But if there is no door that even exists, we have to build one. And what I have seen is that the door doesn't exist for women who want to voice male-dominated sports, promos, fan videos, etc. So how do I build a door? I don't do it alone. I gather a bunch of women to help me because at any point when somebody has wanted change, it takes more than one person. It takes a group
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the day after the workshop, I had this idea, and then I realized that March was Women's History Month, and that I had 2.5 weeks to pull this off.
Wow.
Well, I just decided to dive in, and I didn't realize, looking back now that I've had some time to breathe, I didn't realize exactly what I was doing. Like, I didn't realize what I was getting myself into.
Sometimes that's good.
Yes. And I
Ignorance
think
can be bliss. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was for the best because if I had more time to think about it, then I probably would have gotten into perfectionism and said, oh, no, we can't do this, can't do that.
Getting
or-
ready to get ready.
Right.
Yep.
I just did it. And I called up women that I knew, that I had met throughout the years at conferences or had participated in workshops with. I reached out to women that I admire, that I had seen on social channels doing their thing, and explained what my experience was and what I wanted to do. I wanted to showcase women voicing spots that were originally voiced by men to really get these brands' attention, to really make them realize, you see, you hired a man, and we're not saying he wasn't good. Yeah, it was probably great. But look at what a woman can do.
Yes.
Why not give women a chance? And Building Doors is not about removing men from male voiceover actors from voicing these things. No,
I don't sense that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's about providing equal opportunity. And I think any woman listening to this, and I think most men, if they were to listen to this, would agree that when a female voiceover actor wakes up in the morning and opens their email, they have significantly less opportunities in this genre than men. They don't receive the same opportunities. It's not 50-50. In fact, it's far from. So that's what we're striving for. And when you look at the stats, and then when I started doing my research, right, because I wanted this to be factually based, I didn't want it to just be, oh, Christy's complaining because, she doesn't get booked. No, that's not what this is about. It's not about me. It's about we. It's about providing more opportunities for a group of people that statistically have the purse power in their family. Women determine how to spend the money in their households.
Including sports.
Including sports. So your kids' sports camps, what kind of swag they wear, if they buy season tickets. If they don't buy season tickets, how many tickets do they buy to their favorite team if they go to these events? Their sports leagues. All that stuff is statistically proven to be determined by women. So I almost feel as though brands are missing out on a huge part of their bottom line by not using more women to voice and appear in their advertisements. And then when I started to dig even further, I realized that between, I don't remember exactly, but the NFL, MLB, and NHL, their fan bases are anywhere between 42 and 47% female. So if almost half of your fan base is female, if women are statistically known to be in charge of money in their household and how things are spent. Why are brands not using more women in their advertising in both on camera and voiceover? How many times have you watched the Super Bowl, the World Series, a PGA event, a UFC fight, something on the Cowboy Channel, and all you hear is men?
Hello.
That's
And
all you hear.
if I may interject for a moment, I certainly hope the fact that women's basketball has done so well this year, that there's going to be a wake-up call, that there is such power. And if for no other reason, and this is not to demean, but it does come down to money, the bean counters go, wait a minute, there's a lot of money, just like you touched upon. There's a lot of spending power here. We need to appeal to these women so they can hear the message in literally their voices. I think that is amazing. And as a result, you have these women recording what? What are they presenting to your Open Door campaign?
So what I do is I try to make participating as easy as possible. So I know I'm asking a lot of these women, so I want to make sure that I can do as much on my end as possible. I go to iSpot, YouTube, I Google things, and I find ads that were originally voiced by men. And in the month of March for Women's History Month, I didn't just focus on sports. I also did male-centric brands like Valvoline Instant Oil Change. We did a whiskey or a bourbon brand. We did a lot of other things other than sports that you typically don't hear women voicing. We even did an EA Sports gaming promo for a game. And I pick all the scripts. I type them out. I include a link. I send a Google Doc. The women pick what script they want. If they did not like what I provided, they're more than welcome to pick their own script. In fact, we did have one woman who did that, and it was enormously successful. And once they record themselves via video and audio, Brandon Miller, the VO craftsman, colleague of mine and yours, volunteered to create these videos for me for free. He's
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's terribly supportive, and he has a lot of video experience. He has his own YouTube channel called Cut the Mustard. It's all about condiments and the history of condiments. I mean,
Love it.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's
He's great. He's absolutely great, and he's been a great sounding board for me, and we work together to kind of get these. He does all the work on the videos, right? But we work together.
I was wondering who did that, so thank you for explaining that, because they're fantastically done.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to pass it along to him for sure. And then the women themselves, after that, I ask them to like, share, and tag the brand on every day that is not theirs. So if it's Cheryl's day and Cheryl is going to get posted, then all these other women have agreed to go to Cheryl's post on 5 platforms, like it, tag the brand, and share it to their network.
Beautiful.
And that's kind of how we were able to get such traction the first month, because I had 14 women doing this, and it really spread the reach. And I am terribly, terribly grateful for the women who agree to participate in this campaign, their time, their voice, and also the voiceover community that have really rallied around this and helped it get out even further.
It's funny. I'm not a whiskey drinker, but after listening to that spot, I'm like, I might.
Tina did such a good job. Tina Zaremba, she did a Tin Cup Whiskey's ad, and it is such a good spot. And they liked it. Tin Cup hearted and liked her spot. So they saw it, they liked it. And I hope that shows brands like Tin Cup that venturing out and using a woman's voice isn't going to hurt your bottom line. If anything, it's going to enhance it.
Let's talk about the stats and how successful it's been in really a month. I mean, did you launch it at the beginning of March?
I launched it March 1st, and I did a results video just for the month of March. What I realized was that, yes, we made a little bit of progress, but in the big scheme of things, it wasn't even a half a step. And so that's why I've decided to continue it. I'm posting every Wednesday on 5 different platforms: LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. And so every Wednesday, a new woman is posted reading a script originally voiced by a man. April, the theme of that month was the MLB. And then May is going to be Major League Soccer.
I wrote down your stats. I saw that video that you posted.
Oh, great.
Yeah, for the first month. I mean, they may be baby steps, but 52,000 views equaling 175 total viewing hours with the BBC, ESPN, Nike, Disney, the NFL, iHeartMedia, Walgreens, your beloved Cleveland Browns commenting on your posts, and you've even had a face-to-face, as you mentioned, with Valvoline Instant Oil Change. So first of all, bravo to you and to all the
Thanks.
women who contributed so far. What is the outcome of your conversation with Valvoline, and what, if any, progress has there been with the other companies that have commented on the videos you've shared?
You know, my conversation with Valvoline was absolutely and utterly amazing. I cannot get over how wonderful that conversation went. And I reached out, as I do after every post, I reach out to the brand, either via email or via social media, and say, hey, let's talk. You know, we featured you. It's getting traction. Here are some of the comments people are saying. Here's a link to it. Let's chat. And Valvoline replied, and I spoke with one of their top marketing people, who is a woman, and she was terribly thankful. She said, thank you so much for this campaign. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. You know, we focus on including women techs in all of our commercials and our videos and on socials because we want women to feel comfortable coming into a Valvoline Instant Oil Change to get a service. She said, but it never dawned on us to use female VO. It's always been status quo. What our agency brings to us, we listen to and we approve. And now that we've had this conversation, and now because of your campaign, when our ad agency comes to us with work, I'm going to push back and I'm going to ask for women as well. Women VO.
Yes.
And that's really at the heart of it, what Building Doors is. That's exactly what I want to happen. I want to be able to broker a conversation with a brand or an ad agency. And I really only have one question. And that one question is, when you're sitting around the table and you're reviewing an ad campaign or you're brainstorming for an ad campaign, at what point do you decide if it's a man or a woman's voice or to use both? What conversation happens around that table? Because as a voiceover actor, I want to know. And from what I understand, it really isn't a conversation. So Building Doors wants it to be a conversation. And that's what we're pushing for. And so in my mind, after my conversation with Valvoline, if I were to create an outline of an imaginary door, they'd be like this little chunk on the bottom, right? And I have so many more pieces of the door to build. And I'm excited to share with you that I have a meeting next week with a NCAA Division I Big Ten brand.
I'm not surprised. You're hearing it first, folks. You're hearing it here. Well, depending on when this airs, but that is awesome. Kudos to you. You've got to feel like, and I know you're doing it for more than just you, Christy.
100%.
What you just said is so interesting because I had a woman who was Audra Agan. She's head of her own podcast, and her mission is women in the arena, which is kind of ironic that we're talking about sports and hers is women in the arena, but it is about the very same thing, bringing women even onto the field. Okay. As opposed to, can I be your towel girl? You know, can I just go fetch you water? Whatever. Can I be your cheerleader? It's not that there's anything wrong with those positions, but you're talking about creating this opportunity, and why hasn't there even been a conversation? And sometimes it takes someone just like you to go, how come you're not talking about it? Yeah. And someone else to go, I don't have an answer.
Right. I didn't even realize. I didn't even realize, right?
Because it's always been this way.
Exactly.
That's why we've always done it this way. Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't blame, like, I'm not trying to speak with these brands and be defensive in any way.
I don't get that.
I'm just trying to learn. I'm just trying to learn about the discussions that are had when you decide whether it's a male or female and what kind of reasoning is behind. Because if you go through and look at the spots that we have done, on some of them, it makes absolutely no sense why a woman wasn't used. It just doesn't. For example, Valentina is... oh God, she's such a gifted talent. I mean, she's just an amazing woman. She is an amazing actress, voiceover actor. She gives back to our voiceover community through Voiceover Atlanta. And she sent me a message and said, "Hey, how would you feel if I did this spot?" And she sent me a link, and it literally was this phenomenal, amazing female UFC fighter, right? I mean, she is a beast. And she's
Can you say that again? I like that.
yeah, you don't want to mess with her. Like she's tough, right? I mean, just watching this woman in the ring, you don't want to mess with her. And she is a world champ. Like, she's got the credentials, right? And so they decided to do a commercial where they start off with a close-up of someone stitching stitches right under her eye because her face got busted up and it's all swollen and bruised, right? And they're stitching her face. Then they show her in the ring, and then, they show her working out and training, all this other stuff. And the whole piece is her inner thoughts, right? You hear a voice.
Oh,
and
don't
it's inner
tell me
thoughts.
it was done by a man.
It was done by a man. It was done by a man.
Mm-hmm.
You took a female championship elite athlete, and you show what she has gone through to become that champion, all the pain, all the sacrifice, and the thoughts that are coming out of that woman's head are from a man's voice. You gotta be kidding me.
Well, isn't your inner voice, Christy? Isn't it a Bob?
All right, or Steve.
Steve.
Yeah.
That is amazing. That is, and again, I don't think we're not male bashing here.
No.
Any way, shape, or form.
No.
But at some point, it's kind of like, do you ever hear a piece of music that is so bad and it was with a major label? You look at the producers, you go, the producer, wow, I know that producer from this. I know that musician, the session musician from that. And and you wonder, where along the way was somebody in the whole production of this went, maybe we could do a little bit better, or maybe if we did this, did that. So when I'm hearing this story and I'm thinking, this certainly could not have been a man. Where was someone along the way to go, wait a minute, everything that you just said, doesn't this warrant, especially out of respect for what this spot is about, a woman's voice?
So I want to share something to that point, and I think it's important because it's one of the things that I've learned since launching this campaign, which is the world is not in a lack for women trying to make a difference. There are lots of women, and in our industry as well, who are trying to push to have women voice these sorts of things, but it is denied when it goes to the top office, right? When it goes to the corporate office.
There you go.
So you have to ask yourself, why are there people in positions of power that will not let women get through? And I'm going to be releasing a video soon that kind of addresses some of the points that are consistently brought to me throughout this campaign from people who may not agree with it. And one of them is this: Christy, I see women reporting on ESPN from the field during a football game. Christy, didn't they just hire a female play-by-play announcer for MLB? I mean, is this really a problem, Christy? And that is one of the attitudes that Building Doors is going up against. And quite frankly, that attitude is held by multiple people in our industry and in positions of power. So I don't think that there are people who get it. And typically they are men who don't understand because they don't see it as a problem. They don't think about it in that way.
Well, because they don't have to, Christy.
Yep.
They're not affected by it. It bleeds into so many other things in our society about, race and culture and economics and everything else, that unless you're personally affected by it, you either don't give it thought, or you do. I mean, there's civic-minded people and really involved in many areas of our society that it may not affect them personally. Poverty may not affect them, but they have empathetic and compassionate hearts. So, but I wasn't surprised that you said that those comments are coming from men, because it's not an issue for them.
Right. Yeah. And, I appreciate those comments. I appreciate when I get messages like that. I appreciate when I have conversations like that, because it just fires me up more. And makes me realize just how important this campaign is and how grateful I am to have the opportunity to do it.
Well, and the other thing it does is it helps you be prepared. So when you are at the table, and this is another thing that Audra gave a nod to about when she asked her boss something, and he said, I had never been asked that before. And it goes back to what you said of they've never thought about it. So when you are sitting in these meetings, and I believe you are going to be sitting face to face with some of the heavy decision makers, which a lot of them will probably be male, that you will be prepared for those kinds of comments or remarks. And you'll be able to speak to that because it's all about educating and also the burden of proof. Unfortunately, it's kind of like when you do something for the first time and it's successful, and then everybody starts doing the same thing because they realize it's successful. And so I think it's just going to be the one that says, yes, let's go with this. I love your thinking. Let's give this a try. So you mentioned what your theme is for April. How long do you plan on continuing this campaign? And I think you've already answered this, but what would be the ultimate result of all the effort you're putting into this?
That's a great question. As of right now, I plan on continuing to feature women once a week, every week per month until the end of the year. The campaign will continue in its current form until December of 2024. After that, I will make an assessment and see how I want the campaign to continue. It may continue, but not in the same way. I'm going to wait and see exactly what is accomplished by December and see what makes sense moving forward. For me, I mentioned about that outline of a door and how my conversation with Valvoline was like one little piece of it. I'd like to have at least half of that door, that imaginary or, sketched out door filled with pieces of conversations I've had with brands and ad agencies. And I would like to see real improvement in the number of auditions that our female peers see, the opportunities. In my dream of dreams, I would love to hear half women, half men in promos promoting major sporting events like the Super Bowl, World Series, NBA Finals, possibly even World Cup. If we were to hear women half the time throughout those events, half the time in the weeks leading up to those events to promote them, that would be the ultimate for me. That would be like, okay, doorbell is wide open, doorstop is in it. Come on, walk on in, high five, what you doing, how you doing? Like that kind of thing. Unfortunately, I think we're pretty far out from that. But I think that we can definitely make big strides, hopefully by December.
And I'm going to believe you are, and you will, because there's something in the power of momentum and in the power of purpose, and especially when you have a coalition, if you will, of really strong women putting their energy and efforts into this. And if it is the NBA Finals, please include the Warriors. I'm just saying, well, unfortunately, they didn't get they're not going to get in the finals this year, which makes me really sad. They lost their decisionary game that put the kibosh to that. But I feel your authenticity in this, in your true intent of purpose. I'm really going to hold on to what's happened in women's basketball this year as kind of the lamp that's going to shine the light on the efforts that are going on to really build that door a whole lot faster than maybe even what you imagine it can be. And Christy, you bill yourself as a voice actor and a public speaker. In one of your recent posts, you mentioned how titles don't always tell the story, the whole story, as they can mean different things for different people. And as a public speaker, you share your lived experiences with trauma and its effect on your mental and physical health as a means to help others identify, reclaim authority, and heal, which is so simpatico with what we just talked about. You titled one of your trainings, The Mosaic Method, and talk about the day my crayons got ugly. Would you mind sharing about what those experiences were and a bit about what the Mosaic Method is?
Wow, Cheryl, I appreciate the opportunity to share that. You did your research, friend. Yeah, I would not be able to do building doors if I hadn't gone through what I went through with the Mosaic Method. I wouldn't have the confidence in myself or belief that I could, and And I just really appreciate the opportunity to share it. About 5 years ago, I had a mild stroke. I was jogging and I looked down because I was like, oh, this is really easy today. What's happening? Like my legs feel real nice and light. Like, oh, what's happening? Is this how major athletes feel? And I look down and my legs they're working, but I can't feel it.
And that's how you knew you were having a stroke, or you just knew something was amiss?
I knew something was amiss. And so the next day I was grocery shopping with my then toddler children, and I couldn't feel the right side of my body, my face, my arm, my leg. And so I went to the hospital, and it was without a doubt a life-changing moment for me because I could not imagine not being there for my kids. I couldn't imagine not seeing homecoming and proms and all that good stuff. And so I really had to take a look at what brought me to that ER. And over the course of, I would say it took about 3 years that I realized that a huge part of the reason that I was in the ER was because of emotional trauma that I had not healed. Because when you go through certain things in your life and you don't take the time to process them correctly and you just keep moving on to move on because you don't want to deal with it, it'll catch up to you and it manifests in physical forms.
No doubt. Yeah.
So that was a powerful lesson for me to learn. And that's why I started to really speak and become a public speaker. I've always been a public speaker in some way, shape, or form from when I was younger, but I actually had a message to share this time. And the message was the lesson learned that you really do have to take time to heal the things that you went through in your childhood, in adulthood, because if you don't, not only will it show up in physical forms, but you pass that along to your family. You pass that along to how you parent and how you're a husband or a wife or a friend or an aunt or a sister or a brother. Those things are passed on. And the Mosaic method is a proprietary method that I came up with that I compare our lives to the life cycle of a box of crayons. So, you know how when you were at school and every year you started with a new box of crayons and they're like, oh, you open it up and there's that new crayon smell and they're all pretty and pointy and all their paper's intact. And it's like, ooh, it's so inspirational. We all start off life like that, like a box of brand new crayons. And then little Johnny makes fun of you and calls you fat for the rest of your school time, right? Or Sarah pulls your hair and says, bad things. And so your crayons start to get chipped. They start to break. And then most of us will just stop using the crayons or we throw them away. And my suggestion is to not throw those things away, to not walk away from those traumatic experiences, learn from them, work through them, and take those broken crayons of your life and make a mosaic out of them. Use them to create something new and pretty. And it's not easy work. It's very hard work. The first step, though, which as you mentioned, is to identify. You have to identify the things that in your life that have happened that could be keeping you from being the best wife, mother, father, brother, so on and so forth. That person, like if you work a 9 to 5, that person that's just nasty all the time, that nobody likes, nobody wants to work with them. Why do you think they're that way? Something happened to them. Something happened, someone happened, and they haven't processed it. So they got to treat everybody else like a hot mess.
The mosaic is such a beautiful metaphor. And actually, we love mosaic. So why wouldn't we use broken crayons, still crayon,
okay,
right?
They still color. They still color. They may be broken, but you can still make something pretty out of them. And I think that's the point, is that if we start taking care of ourselves, which is hard, right? But taking care of ourselves, that's going to show in how we treat other people at the office, within our families, within any type of interaction that we have. And wouldn't that make the world a better place?
I always have an amen in my podcast, so it's a perfect time to put it right here. Amen. Amen. That was 2 amens. Amen. 3. Amen, sister. Yes, absolutely. I've said numerous times that if we were all happy in ourselves, number one, and in our, how we walk about the world, how we move about our life, the world would be a just much healthier and happier place to be. And is this an ongoing, because I know that you do your public speaking and you do a coinciding workbook or
Yeah.
program,
So,
so to speak.
yeah, one of the things that I did after my stroke was pursue alternative methods of healing. So I do believe in Western medicine. I like it. I use it. But I also wanted to experiment with Eastern medicine. So I started to get acupuncture, which was amazing. I started to do certain forms of meditation like Qigong, which I still do to this day and I find terribly helpful. One of the methods that I researched was called gashao. And I did a post on LinkedIn about it, and I show my back afterwards. They take a back of a spoon and coconut oil, and you have to go to someone who's certified in it and trained. But there is some stats and real data about, and let me tell you something, P.S. That word trips me up as a voiceover actor because you don't know how, is it data or is it data? Or data? Because I have had clients, Cheryl, ask me to do it both ways. So every time I say the word, I feel like I'm saying it wrong.
It's hysterical. You just put it in data and data and then
I'm covered.
let them choose. Yeah.
Okay. So there's actually data that basically trauma is held within the fascia between your outer skin and your deep muscle tissue. And so years and years and years of trauma can be held in that layer. And so gashao helps bring it out. And you have to have it done more than once. And so the result of my gashao I shared on LinkedIn, my first session, and you would think that, I was in a terrible accident. I mean, it looks horrible. You would think somebody beat me real hard on my back if you were, to see it. And the woman that Dr. Nikki, who did it, I ended up partnering with her to create this workbook, which still we need to do some finishing things, but she really helped me realize how much trauma is stored in the body. And she's an expert on generational trauma. And so I partnered with her to do this workbook, and we go through those steps of identify, go on to processing it and healing. So she helps people go through those 3 steps of the mosaic method with this workbook. And again, I don't think that I would have been able to have the confidence to just go literally jump in head first to this campaign if I hadn't done all of this previous work.
And thank you. That's really one of the reasons I wanted you to speak about it, to share what it is that you've done and are continuing to do with this. Because after doing a little bit of homework, a little bit more homework on your Building Doors campaign, and I read about the mosaic method and watched your video, and I thought, well, this makes perfect sense. This is just a continued expression of the work she's doing. So does the workbook exist, or is this something that's in the process of being birthed?
It exists. We just have to put final touches on. And really, what I'm waiting for is to see the demand for it. Because right now, I don't have people emailing saying, Christy, come give this speech and let's do this workbook. So I want to make sure that there's a demand there before I invest more money and time to get these workbooks 100% completed. And then they just sit in my studio as somewhere to put my foot.
Sure. And yet we know, as in the Building Doors campaign, sometimes if you build it, no pun intended, they will come. Or maybe even start out with an e-version of it and see how people are responsive to it. Because you mentioned this person at work. And to be fair, we're all kind of just bumping around with our bumps and bruises. And sometimes, we meet someone who's just kind of mirroring us, or we come alongside to help them. And either they're responsive to it or they don't want a thing to do with it. They just will stay in their place and they're quite happy. Well, they're not happy, but they think they're happy. They're like, nope, this is my wall. There's going to be no door getting through. I'm not doing the work, and that's just who I am. And so you have to realize sometimes those are the people you release. You pray over them or wish them well or whatever. And then there's others that are very responsive. And when in listening to you and also watching what I have, I'm like, this is such an avenue for people to heal. And I hope those people will reach out to you and let you know who they are. So maybe they can even work with you one-on-one. We're recording this episode in April. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to air it before the end of the month, but this month is devoted to autism awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And your own son was diagnosed with autism and several learning disabilities. with the challenges you've shared in your own upbringing, in some of your other resources that you've posted, and how it has affected your mental and physical health and what you shared here now, how has your experience helped you advocate to get the services your son has needed?
Great question. Amazing question. Cheryl, you really did your research. This is like, I'm so impressed. Yes, our son, who is now 9, we knew when he was 2 that there was something going on. So we took him to get tested when he was like 2.5, 3. They came back and said, nope, he's not autistic. He just has, a handful of disabilities. Okay, great. So then time went on, and 2 years ago, we realized it's just not right. Something's not right. And
Mama knows.
yeah,
Mama knows.
you know as a parent. And of course, I did a lot of research on my own. I talked to other moms. I did a lot of this stuff and took him in again to get tested. And sure enough, he is moderate on the autism scale and severe on ADHD. So those two sometimes they go hand in hand. And I will say that the work that I've done after my stroke has helped me to be more compassionate, more empathetic, and more understanding of what people might be going through. And I try so hard to understand what goes on in my son's mind. And he can't effectively communicate it. And so I have to be creative, and I have to be so patient. So patient. We have a therapist come to the house twice a week for a couple hours at a time. He's not always a fan, but I have seen huge improvement with our son and his ability to share his emotions and his ability to be compassionate towards others. So if I hadn't done that work, I don't know that I would be there for him in the ways that a mother who has a child with disabilities should be. And I've also learned through this whole process that no one's going to advocate for you or for your child unless you do it.
That's right.
No one.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so many people that fall through the cracks. That's why there's so many people with mental health issues and undiagnosed being on the spectrum and not getting the proper services and help that they need. I mean, I have moms who have kids on 504 plans. And for those not familiar, that's for kids. I have one mom friend who has a child with severe anxiety. It allows for extra test time taking. It allows for certain accommodations. And think of all the people that didn't get that or don't get that. Think of what that does to them in their learning experience, or even as adults at work. Like we talked about, that person at work who's always nasty. Well, why are they always nasty? Maybe because they've had a hard time in life because the accommodations weren't there for them what they should have been. There's so many things.
I can't even tell you how grateful I am that you're speaking to this, because just like the comments you've received in regards to your Building Doors campaign, there are people who tend to, and again, I don't really blame them because they just don't know.
Right.
But when you have mental illness or you have children with disabilities, learning disabilities, autism, it's not cut and dry. Because even as women, I will say for my own health, that I've had to be like almost the old nagging lady, like, what is she here for again? Seriously, I went through something with my feet, like 8 years ago that I heard the doctor literally outside say, she's in here every week. What's wrong? She's such a hypochondriac, until he did the test that I insisted on, and it shut him up immediately because he went, oh, it's not in her head. It's just that he was unwilling to perform the test. So I thank you so much for whoever's listening to this and however it can help you in what you're facing of fighting for yourself, knowing your body, knowing your mind, knowing your needs, and being the advocate. It's kind of like as a voice actor, or anything, we know what we need when we need it. And we don't hesitate on asking for it. We don't always get it, but it's the same thing when it comes to our personal health and well-being. So hope you don't mind me interjecting there, but man, did you ring my bell with that going, yes, we need to be our own advocates and advocates for those in our family, friends, and loved ones.
Yes, absolutely. Because no one else is going to do it. I mean, I've had to push to get services for my child. And I think about how privileged I am to have the opportunity to push, because I have a job that allows me to be at home and a job that allows me to create my own schedule. When I am frustrated with the healthcare system or health insurance or any aspect of my child's care, I think about the woman who's working 3 jobs, who has food stamps, who does not have time to sit on the phone for 2 hours and debate with the insurance company about what should be covered and what shouldn't. They don't have time to try and chase down a therapist to get on their schedule. They just don't. So, I am extremely privileged in my abilities to try and stand up for my child. And just because somebody else can't doesn't mean they're a bad person. It means they're probably tied and they can't. They literally, their hands are tied. They can't.
And they don't, like you said, they don't have the time, energy, resources, or money, and probably are stretched to their limits, really. And that's why when our civic leaders speak of having organizations that can help X, Y, and Z, they're not there just to be handouts. They're there to help the very women and men that you just talked about. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm curious, Christy, when you face times of fear or you're going through the hard stuff, either with your own issues or your sons or whatever, what are the tools or faith that get you through those times?
Thank you for asking that, because I would love to share the answer. There are several things. What I'm about to share might not be for everybody, right?
Well, I asked you, it's your answer.
Right. So, number one, after my stroke, I started on a daily basis practicing gratitude. Took me a year before I was able to physically do everything I used to be able to do. For months, someone else had to take my kids to and from school. I spent the majority of my day in bed. If I took a shower, I had to have a 3-hour nap. So I started with gratitude. Today I woke up. Today I took a shower. Then the next day, today I woke up. Today I took a shower. And then I would add on to it, right? So practicing gratitude is a huge part of getting through tough times. I am a person of faith. I believe in God. I was raised to believe in God, and some of you might not, and that's fine. Some of you might refer to God as the universe. Some of you might refer to God as Buddha or Allah. But for me, I believe in God. I believe that my destiny is predetermined. God already has great things in store for me. It's just a matter of me working along my path to experience them. And I pray for patience. I pray for guidance. I also am very thankful when I see some of those destinies or the destinations appear. Faith is a huge part of my day-to-day. And I will say that I have been extremely challenged in this campaign, Building Doors. I have not so great mental days because of some of the things that are shared with me, some of the comments, and also, to be fair, some of the pressure I put on myself. There are days where it gets heavy and I realize that I don't want to mess up for an entire gender of women in voiceover, and that I have a responsibility to all these women who are volunteering and all the people who are supporting and commenting and liking, and that can get heavy at times. And so I do rely heavily on gratitude, my faith, and meditation to get through those things, and to realize that the God I believe in has granted me a great gift, and it's the gift to change my mind. At any time, I have full control, not over my life, but I have full control over my own actions, my own reactions, and how I feel. So if I'm feeling a certain kind of way about a comment or an exchange with someone, I have the power to change my attitude about it. I have the power to decide, okay, I'm going to piss and moan for the next 45 minutes. I'm going to cry for the next 30, and then I'm going to get over it. I'm going to let myself feel these feelings, and then tomorrow is a new day. I have the power and the choice to change my mind at any given time. And so when I remind myself of that, it kind of puts things in perspective. That number one, I'm not in charge of the big picture, but I am in charge of myself.
I am so glad I asked you that. I almost didn't, just because of some of the things you shared in some things I read and heard you say on social media. And I thought, is that going to be a button so that our listeners understand? There's some things you shared about your mom and faith and what have you, but you're in a total safe space, because I'm a God chick all the way. That's why I really feel like sometimes amen is the only,
Mm.
amen and hallelujah are the only things to put that little exclamation on what someone says.
Mhm.
And also allowing ourselves grace. I say this as much for me as I say for you and anybody else listening. When we stink up the room, because there are going to be days, just because you walk by faith does not mean that you're
Mhm.
inhuman. You're going to act and react in ways that are like, she's what?
Mhm.
Well, I'm human first and foremost, and I fail and fall and stink up the room. And hopefully by the afternoon, I can choose to be happy, positive, and productive and not cause pain, and instead be a healing, loving presence to one another. That is kind of my daily prayer. So you're in a very safe space to talk about that, and I appreciate that you did. And I would love to know. I know it makes you hopeful. You just shared that, I think, unless there's something else you want to share about what makes you hopeful and what brings you joy.
My kids bring me a ton of hope and joy. I see so much of myself and my husband in them, and it's just such a joy to see them develop into human beings, like people.
Real
Real
people.
people, not just, toddlers, whatever, but, how they choose to deal with their friends and tough situations. And I think it's a privilege to be a part of that. I think that right now, and I honestly feel this often, is that the world is coming to an end. I feel like a lot of things within current events can make us feel that way. And so I try really hard to not consume a lot of social media, not to consume a lot of news, because it dilutes my faith, and it dilutes my gratitude, and it dilutes who I'm trying to be. So I try to consume those things in small amounts, because if I lose hope that someday there will be 50% women voicing the Super Bowl promos, if I lose hope that my son will get the care he needs throughout the rest of his life and will be able to find a good job and a stable job and have a family if he chooses to. If I lose hope on all of those things, then I'm not going to be the person that I've been able to develop into the last 5 or 6 years, right? And I don't want to give that
Mhm.
up, because I like who I'm becoming. I like what the work has done to me. And I like being of service to others. And I feel like right now I'm in that space to be of service to others and to maybe inspire a little hope in other people.
And you said it right there. When we reach beyond us or I and reach out to other people to be of service, because so much of what the voiceover industry is being of service. Or again, anything where we are working with other people is when we can be of service and look beyond just what's right in front of us. I think that's what we're all here for anyway, right?
Yep.
Besides the Cleveland Browns, ring in your phone right now, hopefully after we record, or even while we're recording, that's fine. Go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead, ring the phone. With the voiceover gig of all gigs, is there another ultimate voice job that you'd like to check off the proverbial VO bucket list?
Sure. I would love someday, even though it's not necessarily my lane, just to pay homage to my father, I'd love to do some sort of nature special.
Mhm.
But I think anything in sports. So I would love to do a PGA. Love to do a PGA promo. That would be probably, I would say, top 3. NFL would be 1 for sure, but PGA undoubtedly. Our daughter is very into golf, and we recently went to a Division 1 women's match, and she got to see D1 athletes in person. And golf has been a big part of my family's life, because my dad and my mom golfed a lot. I hated watching golf growing up, but I would love, 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 love to be able to sit my daughter down and watch, a PGA tournament and have her hear my voice. I think that would be so cool.
Make it so, number 1.
Yes, that's the voice, Cheryl. That's the voice.
There's a question I like to ask all of my guests before we say goodbye. And of course, I'll have your contact info in the show notes. If there was a soundtrack to your life, what would be on it and why?
I wish I would have known this question. It would be a mix. It would definitely be a mix. For example, I love Gustav Holst's The Planets, Neptune. Love it. I've been listening to that since I was in 5th or 6th grade. Love it. That's classical music.
Yes, and makes perfect sense considering what you shared about your dad.
And then it would also include probably some classic country, only because I grew up in a rural farming community. It would include a lot of 80s hair band rock because I grew up in the 80s. And then it would include a lot of hip hop and R&B because I went to college in that era. So that's what was booming at the time. And also probably like Dave Matthews Band, Pearl Jam. So it would be a really eclectic mix. I grew up playing 5 instruments. So and I used to write my own music.
What? Okay, that clearly I didn't do enough research because I didn't read that. What? Okay, we have a just like you have 30
All right.
seconds. What do you play?
I started with guitar, then trumpet, then violin, French horn, and flugelhorn. Flugelhorn is the marching band equivalent to the French horn. And I used to write my own music and play it on my guitar. I was band president for 2 years in high school, and I went to band camp and jazz camp.
Okay, anybody listening who's in casting, this woman's a badass, okay?
Or a geek,
No.
either way. But
You are a badass, okay? And I mean that in every wonderful stretch of the imagination. Christy Harst, thank you for joining me and sharing your story and your huge heart. You just have a huge, beautiful heart. And I have no doubt that not only will the doors be built, but they will fly off the hinges. And many women will have you to thank for pioneering the change for them to have their voices heard in the sports arena as well.
I hope so. And thank you for having me on. You did amazing research. So thank you for the time that you spent. Time is the best gift you can give someone, and I appreciate your time.
You are so welcome, and I appreciate your time as well. It's the least I can do for you coming on and opening up your life to me and my listeners. And obviously, you're going to have to come back at the end of the year because we're going to have a lot to celebrate.
Yay!
And if you're not a champagne drinker, if teetotaler, coffee, whatever, we're going to have to cheer in and clink something.
Yes.
Something.
Yes.
Gatorade. That'll be it.
it.
Okay, that'll be apropos. We'll do a toast to Gatorade.
Amazing.
I'd also like to thank the following news outlets for the use of their clips: BBC, PBS, Now This, UNESCO, and Some Good News. I especially want to thank Joel and Luke Smallbone, otherwise known as the group for King and Country, for allowing me to use an excerpt of their song Together, which could not be a more hopeful and inspiring song for such a time as this. Finally, I'll leave you with the following from Proverbs 23:18. Surely there is a future, and your hope will not be cut off. Thank you again for joining me today. Feel free to offer feedback or a story idea at 19stories@soundsatchelstudios.com, via Instagram at CherylHollingVO. I look forward to sharing more stories on the next episode of 19 Stories from Fear to Hope. Until then, stay healthy and hopeful.
Together with our differences, together we are bolder, braver, stronger.